So what we're doing is we're tipping back the colonies.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the boss. That's the old man. Better go say hi. There, can't be making videos when the boss is around. Out this morning clearing out some yards to be able to set my bees down into. I have a little bit of an optimistic forecast coming at us. So I pulled out the tractor from the farm, and this is one of the yards out of 5 I'm going to set bees down into. This is an old farmyard right along the escarpment, so a little bit of a heat sink down here. So hopefully I can set down counting at least 2 truckloads here. So hopefully a full truckload here, and then another truckload over there. And if I have to, I've cleared out 2 little spaces here just to be able to fit a third if I needed to. So I'm preparing to move my hives out. I'm just seeing if I can move these bees. Ooh, the shed has just come alive here. I'd rather move these hives out through the day, just because moving hives out at night is so much bloody work. So the trick is to cool this shed down to be able to stick the bees in the boxes. And for the longest time I've always had trouble with an overheated shed. But since I've been able to increase the ventilation through the shed to be able to keep the temperature down in here, I've been able to sneak these hives out during the day. I've been able to, drop the temperature of the shed through the night to cool off this shed. So then when I opened up the door, the hives are all stuck to their boxes and they weren't flying out kind of like this. So right now the shed's at 5. It's about 3 degrees outside right now. So this is a little bit too much activity. I can't move on this. So what I'm going to do is tonight I'm going to start moving the hives. I'm going to load up a load, and well, it's supposed to be windy, so I probably won't move tonight. But I'll get a load loaded up. I'll back the truck in here, and then first thing tomorrow morning I'll start moving. And hopefully I'll drop the temperature down in the shed. I'll crank the fans on, and I'll try to pull this temperature down as much as I can to be able to cool off these hives, to stick them into the boxes. And then maybe, just maybe, with the cooler type weather tomorrow, I might be able to maintain a cooler shed and not have this type of flight. Not sure if you can see that, but the bees are taking flight. Just too much activity. I mean, there's no point. I keep them in the shed all winter under very specific temperature and management, and then there's no use, losing bees just to casual drift like this for no reason whatsoever. First load out to the yard, and it's -8 right now. Had a good freeze last night, things have firmed right up. But this is one of the reasons why I'm moving on the frost, because even with the frozen ground, that sun over the last couple of days, you know, driving that frost out of the ground, it did a great job clearing the yard. Like, look at that. It's going to be an amazing heat sink for the bees once they get out flying. But the fact remains, I'm going to have trouble if I don't watch it getting stuck. Working on my third load of bees now, and the bees are staying nice and tight in their boxes. It's quite nice. It's about -5. The sun's just come out, and there isn't a whole lot of activity. And I'm impressed how this is working now. I think I finally got it figured out. I've always had trouble with an overheated shed, and every time I'd open the door to try to do work on days like today to move bees out through the day, I'd have a cloud of bees flying out the door. Could never make it work. But right now I'm maintaining the shed at 0 degrees, and holding these bees in their box is quite nice. There is virtually no bee flight in the shed right now. So the difference between then and now is the air exchange. For the longest time, what I do is I pull my air in through these vents across the room with the ceiling fans to mix up the air, and it gets pulled out of the shed through those 2 other vents. And those fans are controlled on 2 modules here. As I was initially had this place set up, I had my air intake vents. They're 2x2 openings, and what I had is on the outside in my baffle, I had a series of light baffles in there, and what that was doing is restricting the light from coming in, but also it was restricting the airflow, so I wasn't getting near the airflow coming into the building as I wanted. So finally figured that out, and I took those air baffles out, or the light baffles out, and it allowed much more air to come into the building on my high airflow. And because of that, the ambient air temperature inside is basically the same as the air temperature outside, because I'm able to exchange air so much quicker and more fluidly. And in turn, what that has allowed me to do is cool this shed down after a warm day. Like yesterday was a warm day. I could never have moved bees yesterday because it's too warm. But I had a cold night, so I was able to exchange. I had these fans going constant. I didn't allow them to idle down. I had them going full. So it was -8 outside. It was probably about -5 or so, whatever, inside here. And it cooled the shed down, sucked those bees into the boxes. And then when I opened up the door and this ray of light comes in, they recognize that obviously, but they are nice and tight in their boxes. They're not going anywhere. So this has allowed me to move these bees out onto the truck through the daylight, down the road and down into their yards, taking advantage of a nice cold day, a few cold days before some real warm days. It has allowed me to, walk in the frost, allowed me to work through the day, not have to focus all my work at night. There's 2 truckloads out, and it just got too warm. I'm gonna have to call it until this evening. It's 5:30 in the afternoon, and it's about 5 degrees, and the bees are just getting up and taking a bit of a flight. Not a lot, just real light flight. You can see the tops of the lids are being spotted with bee poop. So they're getting opportunity to get out and do a bit of a cleansing flight here. Sounds really nice. So this is a good start. Carrie's back on staff now. I can tell she's been in the yard because she put in the entrance reducers, and I notice she's been calling out the dead, which that means out of this truckload there's only one dead. So that's promising. Oh, this flight sounds so good. So this is a good start. I can't wait until we have these warm days come this weekend. These bees are going to be flying. Just nicely set out my 5s. This yard's not as big as the rest, but holy crap. They're loving that sun. Making a cleansing flight. Jacket's getting dirty.
Trade my white one in for brown one.
No doubt. So this is nice. Looks like we got our timing just perfectly. I'm glad we set them out when we started here, because this is a beautiful day. Listen to that sound. And that's just my 5s. These guys are coming to life. Oh, this is exciting. This is what I wait for. Ooh, my bees. This afternoon is supposed to be warmer. I bet you we're going to take a look this afternoon. It's plus 12 right now. I have about 450 hives in this yard, and they have taken flight. Oh, it just feels so good. The energy in the air, it's just terrific. Those bees are up and flying. It's a beautiful cleansing day. This is the just this energy in the air. This is what I wait for every year. That's what it's all about. There you have it. Fans are off. The shed is empty. The building is quiet. 10 degrees on a Saturday afternoon. This yard is just electric. There is energy in the air. We're going through doing our initial hive assessment. So we're going through basically, what I'm doing is I'm tipping back the colony just to heft for weight. And then I'm also doing a strength assessment at the same time. And there isn't a whole lot, like as I was going through, I didn't notice a lot of light hives, so we're not too worried about starvation, but we just want to make sure we can target those ones that are a little bit hungry and drop some honey into them right away. We have some honey back in storage we kept over winter, and any hive that's a little bit light, we will just drop a honey frame in. But we got going here, and I just want to show you what we are seeing. Basically, we're just tipping the colony back. And we have about 4 frames in that nuke. Has a little bit of honey on the side. Now I'll get you to tip right down the line. Okay. So I've marked this one as a strong. This is a box of bees. Looks good. We have enough honey stores in there. Another box of these.
A little bit pissed.
Another box of bees. Box of bees. Which one did I say needed food? This one needs food. Yeah, this one's a bit late. So Carrie's going to dig into, actually, let's take the lid off from this one. Take a peek. It's going to be fun digging down into these guys. They're just a little bit light, so we're going to have to drop a honey frame on the side somewhere. So we'll see how that goes. Carrie gets the fun of doing that. And I forget, this one I think needed food too. This one has enough food in there. And I tipped this one back. I think this one needed food also. Is that light?
Yeah, this one needs.
Another box of bees. So we're going to target these nucs over the next day and a half. Get through all these nucs, make sure they have the food they need, and then we'll get into the singles and make sure that everything is satisfactory with them. And that feels really good. Tipping back colonies like that sure puts a beekeeper in a good mood. How many nucs did you say I have?
Around 340, 450,
I got 340 or 400 nucs. They're going to be needing space. So, which is good. These hives look absolutely brilliant. I'll just give you a sneak peek here.
421.
421 in boxes of bees. Tipping back boxes all day long. I'm feeding roughly, we have to drop honey frames in roughly 10% of them. But I'm going to have to get feed out to these guys right away. Just wetting up the frames a little bit. And I will probably do that with open feed. Bugger off bees. Unless it gets cold, then we'll have to bring the pails out. We'll do that with the nucs anyways. So it's -1, and we've worked our way through another yard this morning. A little bit cooler, so the bees aren't, spread out, so they look a little bit smaller. I haven't marked too many boxes of bees in this yard, but it makes a lot of sense. It looked like this truckload was pretty much a load of singles, or a load of nucs that we'd made up last year that I put into singles. So a little bit of a smaller cluster in a bigger box makes the appearance of a smaller hive. But these guys, the clusters, the integrity held themselves, and I think they're going to be just fine. Working my way through the rest of the yard and got into some more of my mature hives, and I'll show you pretty much what I'm seeing. So what we're doing on this round is we're tipping back all our colonies because we want to see how heavy they are. This way we can target the hives that are in starvation mode, and we can quickly drop some frames of honey into them. I'm not finding a lot of hungry hives throughout the apiary so far. Everything seems to have an adequate amount of honey in it. In this yard anyways, we're seeing a little bit smaller clusters, size of a basketball or whatever. It is -1, so they're a little bit tighter, but that shows the true size of the colony cluster. When it's a little bit cooler, they're not as active, and you can really see a well-defined cluster. So I'm seeing a lot, and these are more nucs. So once we get into the other yards, we'll be able to see what the general mature hives are in the apiary. So what we're doing is we're tipping back the colonies.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the boss. That's the old man. I better go say hi. There, can't be making videos when the boss is around. So anyways, what we're doing is we're tipping back the colonies, and I'm assessing the cluster. I'm identifying all the boxes of bees, all the 7, 8, 9, 10 frames of bees, and I'm marking them with a blue tag, and like this here. And that way, and then we're marking the small ones with a gray tag, and all the mediums don't get any tag. So this way, when we come back around in 3 weeks, I can assess the colony condition again and see if they advanced or fell back, and just helps me call out those queens that failed through the spring. This one is a medium, has no tag. So it's about 4 frames of bees. Nice little cluster. These guys are gonna make me some money. Got about 3, 4 frames of bees. I'm gonna mark them as a medium too. So this one I didn't mark with anything. I'm looking at roughly 3 to 4 frames of bees down below. So they get no attention. This one I marked as a blue. Here's a box of bees. It's a definite blue on these guys. So it's important I find these big ones, and they have lots of weight to them too, which is nice. So it's important I find these big ones and mark them, because they're going to need a little bit more attention further down the road for space. Another box of bees, about 8 frames I'd say. And we're looking at about 4.5 frames of bees on this one. So this is basically what I'm seeing throughout the apiary. You know, a good basketball sized cluster, and maybe a little bit bigger. Finding a few blue tagged ones, which is good. I'll be able to target those for splits. I'll also show you what I'm doing. I'm also assessing, we're already looking for our breeder queens. So as we're going through and I'm assessing the big ones, the boxes of bees, blue tagged. These guys are nice and heavy. And there's about 8 frames of bees in here, nice and gentle. I'm looking at my tag here. This hive was set up in 2007. And last spring, I had a blue tag on there, which said that it was a really good come out of spring box of bees. And I've just marked them with another blue tag, which is telling me that this hive has performed excellent through 2 springs now, last spring and this spring. It's a 2017 queen. So she's probably not the original queen, but this hive has maintained its succession once, maybe twice now, successfully. So whatever's going on within this colony, I like. So this automatically tells me this is a candidate for a queen rearing operation, for a breeder queen. So as I send Carrie around, she automatically looks for the double blue tags, and she looks to see how long it's been in successive development. And also I'll show you what else we do when we go around and we find these colonies with any types of traits that we like. What we do is we mark them with a big tack like this, and this doesn't tell us anything other than whatever's going on at that particular time at that moment we really liked. So there's a trait here that we like. These guys have been going through since 2016, and they've been able to hold their integrity of this colony throughout all those years. And pretty much you know, not only make me money on surplus bees, but there's some kind of a trait going on here that we like, probably honey production. I bet you these guys were, you know, ranked a little bit higher as we're pulling honey, and they've been going on since 2016. So this is what I want to propagate within my colony, within my operation. I want that continued succession. I want productiveness. I want hives that are gentle, that brood up, produce lots of bees, you know, just thrifty. And by doing this, we don't have to keep records. We don't need a notepad in our pocket and numbering hives and just keeping track of records that we actually never get around to updating or using. It just gives us an in-field way of assessing our colony stock and then being able to pull that brilliance out when we need to use it later on as we start grafting and breeding for our queens. At any rate, this yard is done. Carrie's done her work now. And it's getting a little bit warmer now. I bet you it's above freezing. We are going to head to the next yard and hopefully get through another yard before lunch. Something odd kind of happened. I'm not sure what it was, but it certainly was odd. So we come to this yard this afternoon. We got done one truckload of bees here working through. Everything's going pretty well. We're not pulling out too many dead. We're seeing lots of good sized clusters, lots of integrity to these hives, lots of feed. These queens are starting to lay. They have a lot of them have little patches of brood about the size of your fist, right? So they would have done that in the shed. And now that queen has just stretched out her egg laying around that all the way around. So she's ramped right up. She's laying eggs, and she's just started that. So the bees are this close and bringing those eggs to larvae and developing out these nests. So I'm working through, you know, we find the occasional queenless hive, so then we merge it with a smaller hive just to make use of the bees and stuff like that is just what I do. And we're working through, everything's good. Yay, yay, yay. And we come across a part in the yard where all of a sudden we're seeing queenless hives. Queenless. 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 6 in a row there. Obviously all part of one yard that I'm experiencing some losses here. So I said, what the hell? So we, like as we work through here, I'm tipping them back. I'm assessing for strength. I'm assessing for weight. And we're not digging down into the colonies too much. Oh, you blue bugger. Not unless we have to. We'll shift the frames into the center, just to center that cluster. But for the most part, we are not going down in that nest a whole lot. So I come upon these hives and I open it up, tip it back, and they just sounded different. So I dug down into it, and then working through, I heard it again, and I heard it again. So then I had Carrie, I was thinking, what the hell? So then I had Carrie work through all the colonies, checking for eggs, backwards, see how far back until we got out of the losses. And then I worked this way from the yard until we got out of the losses, and we worked our way out of them. So I'm not sure what the hell happened there. Just all of a sudden, just a sporadic 50% queen loss just in a section of the yard. Really weird. No correlation to age of queen or size of the colony. The big ones, I have some big ones here that have gone queenless, and I have some medium size here gone queenless. So Carrie's gone to get some of the fives that we worked through yesterday, some of the smaller fives, and we're going to merge those smaller fives into these queenless units and just try to salvage the bees inside. And well, that's what we got these fives for, is just to help fill in all the mistakes and all the problems in the apiary without any concern. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to drop these fives into a single box. We're going to transfer the fives into a single box and then merge them into these queenless units. And hopefully we'll come back in a week and a half, and hopefully the bees have all gone up around the queen, started developing out a nest, and I'll just put that little bit of an episode behind me. Hear that? Hoplessly Queenless. So the idea here is we bring our nuke with a fresh little queen in there and merge it. We're going to drop that nuke into the single box over top of the queenless unit, and then that little wee unit should receive all the bees from the bottom, and the two will merge all nicely, and then we'll build a salvage that space. Salvage the bees.
Here she is.
And give these nukes just a little bit of a boost. There she is. We'll come back in about a week and a half to see if it was successful. These bees, I set out some dry supplement for the bees to forage on to bring back. It's a little bit of a protein source. This is one of those times in the year that's absolutely fascinating. You just clouds of bees while they forage, actively forage on this supplement. It's one of those spectacles. I just love it. You'll notice they'll come in here and they will, kind of dance around and dust around in here and try to gather as much of this supplement as they can on their bodies and on their legs, just as if it was pollen, and they'll bring it back to the colony. But after they do that, they kind of dust around in here, they get all covered up, and then they will fly up and out, and they land in the grass. And when they sit in the grass just outside here, they kind of groom themselves. They groom it off their bodies onto their legs. Holy, this is a lot of bees. And I think they're also grooming it off their eyes, because I'm wondering if this might, blind them as this dust gets all covered on their bodies and over their face. I bet you they can't see. So I wonder if part of that landing on the grass to groom has to do with them kind of wiping their eyes so they can actually see where they're going. Super cool. Well, it's 5 o'clock and the bees are telling me at 2. That and my smoker ran out halfway through this yard, so that didn't help. But we got through this yard today. What's in here? There's about 430 hives in this yard. And this is the losses we've pulled out so far. I don't know why we brought the half ton. Well, I know why we brought the half ton, because of all that. Don't want to get stuck. One of the reasons why I was so anxious to pull out on the frost, because I knew I wasn't going to get an opportunity to get back into these yards with the truck. It is wet, but it doesn't matter because the bees are out here and they're flying. So I'm not sure what percentage of loss would we have got. 10% maybe? Yeah, Yeah, we'll have to do a count on the losses, but whatever it is, the losses fit in the back of this half ton out of this yard of 430, which is pretty good. I was getting kind of excited a little earlier when I went through the nucs, said the nucs are so big and vigorous, as I was thinking, oh shit, this is going to be absolutely fantastic, what I'm going to do with all these bees. But then I actually get through the rest, most of the other apiary. I've gone through 800 or 900 hives now over the last couple days. And there's big ones and there's small ones, and there's heavy ones and there's light ones. There's drone layers and just problems. And my notion about not having to feed patties, I think I tossed that out the window. We have some snow and cold coming over the next few days. Hopefully it's just the next few days and doesn't linger on into a couple of weeks. So we're going to have to get some resources onto these colonies. I have some open feed for these guys and they've accessed that for a day, day and a half now. Tomorrow I hope they can get back into it. But if we're shut down for another week, like these colonies, there's a lot of them have honey in there, but the combs are dry. We got to get these combs wet. We have to spark up this queen, and to do that we need to put syrup in. We have to put patties on. If they can't fly, we got to give it to them inside the colonies. So looks like as soon as we get round this first round, which is an important one, this is kind of, you know, pull out all the poor and the weak and anything that we don't want to spend time and money on. We call out, so then we can focus on everything else. With that, I'm going to help Carrie finish up this yard. It's got a few hives to center, and a few hives to drop frames of feed into, and then call it a day. I anticipated this snow coming through, watching the forecast and such, but it looks like we're in for some cold weather, some very heavy snow over the next couple days, next couple of nights, -15s. So we have definitely swung into a shutdown for all types of bee work. As soon as we get around, as soon as we get a chance to get around, we're going to start dropping patties on these colonies just to make sure that they have the resource they need to be able to build and develop out their colonies. I didn't have time to drop patties on our first time around. We had to get through quick to assess for colony weight and emergency feed. And we just got that done before this cold weather come through. So at least everything has enough honey on. I had to at least drop honey frames into 10%, 15% of my colonies, which desperately needed it, especially the big ones. So that was a very important job to be done. We didn't have time to drop patties anyway. So this next round, as soon as we get back into these hives, which looks like it's going to be about a week or so, we're going to drop patties, we're going to drop strips, and we're going to feed if we don't have the feed pails on by then already. So a little bit of a shutdown. At least I was able to get my colonies out, and I was able to allow them flight for 3 or 4 days. I was able to emergency feed and assess my stock to see whereabouts I was at. I think I'll try my best not to worry too much about this cold, snowy weather coming through, because all the colonies are in a nice sheltered yard, tucked away. We didn't really open up too many of them, so they're nice and sealed up. They have all the food they need, and the clusters are adequate. So we'll just spend this next week mixing and cutting patties, scraping up equipment, cleaning up equipment, and just trying our best not to fuss about this weather. So how are you making out?
Our stack of boxes that need to be repaired is here.
Those are boxes to be repaired,
One's on the wall.
frames scraped up, and boxes to scrape and clean up from, these are the losses here from this year.
Yeah.
Those are this year's losses, and this is last fall's call out. And then we sort, how are you sorting them here? That's honey.
This is the honey, these are empties, and that's pollen.
Those are empties and those are pollen. And then we know what we have, so we can sort into the boxes and make up splits. So Carrie's having lots of fun today, but she could be outside in that. Well, they've drank the pails down. Syrup feeders are done. So many bees. The bees are up and they are in full flight. Oh, this just feels so good. It's only +5 right now. These bees are just ready to get going, I guess. So as the rule on the honey farm, anytime, any moment that we're able to work with bees, we're out working with bees. So it's definitely a bee working day today. They are heavy into the feeders. Looks like they've been flying for a little while so far today. These bees are going absolutely bonkers over this. Oh, I just love the sound of this activity. They're also, the bees are also in the syrup feeder. This is working quite nice. We have wood floats in here and a bit of straw, so they don't drown. They're all nicely lined up there, sucking out all the syrup. So there isn't a whole lot of traffic here, which means that there won't be a whole lot of fighting. So we're only putting 1 or 2 open feeders per yard just to provide them that inflow of syrup. Some years I put pails on in the spring. Just depends how hungry these hives are. For the most part, these hives are heavy enough. They have enough stores inside. They don't really need that emergency feed of syrup up on top. So anyways, we're going to be going through, and Carrie's out dropping some more syrup into these open totes. And I'm going to start putting patties on these colonies and putting apivar strips in. So now is the time to get this job done. I'm going to poke down to a few colonies just to see how they're maintaining their brood, their nest. Last time I was here before the snow, she laid frames full of eggs. So I just want to see if they hung on to all those eggs and moved those eggs into larvae, just to step that development of the nest forward. Or I want to see if she laid the eggs, and I want to see if the workers, cannibalized some of those eggs, pulled back the nest just because of the cold. Because it got down to -18 2 nights ago, and then -15 3 nights ago. So it's pretty cold. So I just want to see if that weather kind of shocked them back. Tip these guys back in there. Yeah, these are a box of bees. I'm also looking at food stores. The honey on hand for sure, but I want to see whether or not they've been getting that opportunity to go out to the syrup feeder and bring that fresh syrup back into the colony. And they have. You can see this frame here is being stored full of syrup, and that's really important when these colonies, like, we're always focusing on protein, but it's that sugar source is extremely important. That's that other part of the equation. So you got to get that fresh sugar coming into the colony, otherwise they won't be excited enough to start brooding up. So I'm just going to go down, I'm going to dig down into the center of the nest, and that's basically where the activity is going to be, where I want to see. So there's some capped brood surrounded by eggs. And I'm looking on this side of the frame, again, capped brood, a little patch of capped brood surrounded by eggs. So those eggs have just been laid recently. What I want to look for is larvae that's developing out. Here's another frame of brood, capped brood, surrounded by eggs again. Capped brood surrounded by eggs, and we're starting to get into larvae that's mature, that's hatched, and the bees are starting to take it on into the larval stage. So there's a little bit of ambition there. I'm also seeing this nest rimmed with syrup, which is extremely exciting. That means the bees are getting the opportunity to go out to the syrup feeder, bring back this fresh syrup. When I was first going through the nests, right after I put them outside, just those spot checks I was doing, the nest was really dry. There's capped brood, there's the queen. Capped brood surrounded by eggs. I want to see more mature larvae. Again, capped brood surrounded by eggs. There we go. So we got a frame that has more mature larvae on it, rimmed with eggs. Okay, we have all stages of larvae on this frame. Capped brood, mature larvae, eggs, the whole bit. And then we're going to get back in the feed frames here. Oh no, we're still into brood here. So this is what I want to see. I want to see this brood. I just want to see the egg stage, because what I'm looking for is the advancement from the egg stage, which is telling me what I'm seeing here, a nice pattern, like nice and uniform. So what I'm seeing is these bees have held enough girth to be able to, and this side too, this side's full of mature brood, like mature larvae. So that cold weather didn't seem to hold these guys back at all. I was afraid that this cold weather had snapped that colony back a little bit, and you know, they had cannibalized those eggs, or maybe because there isn't that inflow of syrup and protein, that they would be pessimistic and they wouldn't take those eggs to advance them to that next stage of development, which is the larval stage, because it's the worker bees that decide that. So I'm treating my colonies with Apivar. This is a mite treatment. I'm using my chemical resistant gloves. I hate these things, they're so cumbersome. But you use one strip for every 5 frames of bees. This is a box of bees, so they're getting 2 strips. And this one nice thing about singles is it's nice and tight. The bees are tight, kind of confined in this box, so they develop out this nest. And those mites can't get away from these strips, so it's a very effective way of treating. It's what I call a targeted treatment. Then I'm putting a protein patty on, long overdue. It looks like they're managing the development of their nest all the same anyways. Holy crap, this yard's alive. Carrie just got stuck over there, found a wet spot, so we're just attempting to pull her out. But this yard, I just can't help to walk through it. This yard is absolutely terrific in activity. The open feeder is just going bonkers. This is the supplement feeder. Just going crazy. Holy crap. So many bees. And they're in the syrup, which is really nice to see. So this is saving me from having to put the pails out onto the colonies. And they're just, you know, they're feeding just perfectly, all nice and orderly. Very little fighting. They just all kind of line up like they're drinking out of a trough. Whew. And they are busy. It's really interesting. You know, I just about got stung there, and I'm by the syrup feeder. And they're a lot more aggressive when taking down syrup than they are feeding on protein supplement. And I don't know why. I guess maybe it's more of a robbing spirit when they're after the sugar, and maybe it feels like it's more of a foraging spirit when they're after the supplement. I have no idea. But you know, I can hold my face in front of this thing without a problem. I mean, you can even stir them up a little bit, get more up in the air. They could give a damn that I'm here, but I can't do the same with the sugar over here. So these guys are feeding. Here, I'll go to the other one. Heavily feeding, and I'm getting dive bombed right here by the sugar. Look at these guys. Isn't that cool? All lined up. But these guys are after my face here. So it's probably more of a robbing kind of frenzy where they're more aggressive, and more of a foraging frenzy where they're more focused on flying. I don't know. Holy crap, man. I mean, what the hell? It's minus 13, and we had at least a couple inches of snow last night. Might as well be using this damn thing. I haven't put it away yet. It's the middle of April. At least the sun's shining. And at least the forecast is optimistic. Holy, talk about testing your patience. So what I'm going to do is, in that 10% loss, or in those empty spots that we have in the yards right now, I'm going to go through, I'm going to follow through with my whole program of rejuvenating this apiary, continual rejuvenation. And one of those things is filling in those dead spots. And I like filling them in as quickly as I can, so when I'm going through with my work, I'm not obsessed over those empty spots within the yards. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to pick up these nucs that shown some promise, and I marked them with the blue tag. That means they're full of bees. And it's a good day to move because there isn't a whole lot of activity, and my movement's going to be fairly stress-free. So I'm going to pick these girls up, I'm going to take them out to the yards, and I'm just going to drop that nuc into that spot just to hold that spot as a place taker until we can come around when it warms up and we can transfer that nuc into an empty single shell. working through the yards, working through tough conditions like this, where it's cold and there isn't a lot of resource coming in, these bees really have to manage themselves to, you know, that certain balance, that equilibrium, which they are capable of sustaining throughout this variable condition. These conditions are very variable in the sense that it's warm, it's cold, there's intermittent inflow of resource coming in. So these hives really have to be able to truly define the progress that they're moving forward. Otherwise, they simply will collapse. So as we're going through these colonies and we're working them through these tough conditions, you can really see that well-defined nest, and you can really tune into exactly that size of colony and the vigor expressed within it. Because they're not going to provide abundance over what they can actually sustain themselves. So I'm going through and counting these frames of bees, and you go down and you take a look at the amount of brood that they have established and which they're maintaining. And it really tells you a true reflection on the condition of that colony. And you'll notice that these hives will be a nice cluster of bees in there, and you look down into the brood nest and you can see exactly what had gone on that week and a half before that, just by the staging of the brood and the development. That queen's laying eggs like crazy. She'll lay eggs as hard and as fast as she can this time of year. It's a matter of those worker bees, which then take those eggs, and it depends on how optimistic they are at that particular time on taking that egg as it hatches into development. So if you see a nest that has all stages, from eggs right up to mature brood, all stages of larvae, you know, all stages of cap brood, then you can tell that that nest is feeling good, it's robust, the conditions warranted it just to progress nice and smoothly through all those variable conditions. But as you're going through, and kind of what I'm seeing in my nests right now, you're seeing stagey brood. Well defined, obviously, but just stagey, where certain days they pull back a little bit more, certain days they ramp ahead a little bit more, just as they're trying to find that equilibrium of that balance within that nest to be able to progress this hive, their colony, throughout into spring. Right now is an extremely critical time for these nests in their development, as they take that winter nest and they move it forward into, you know, spring bees. They're in fact taking those old winter bees and they're flipping it out into a young, youthful nest. And they can only do that with resources, and they can only do that with optimism. And if they don't have the inflow coming in, they're relying on building out that nest with what they have internally within the nest and within themselves. So it just depends on how much resource they have on hand to be able to develop these bees, flip them into that spring nest. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of inflow right now, so it's kind of staggered the development of these hives. So it really pressures these small ones. Like the big ones, they got all this resource on hand, they got pollen, they got all this body fat within them. They develop out like 2 or 3 frames of brood, which, you know, can flip them nice and comfortably into a spring nest. But when you get these small ones, these small hives that are only 2 frames of bees, 3 frames of bees, and they're trying to muster as much resource and as much, you know, colony girth as they can. If they can't rear enough brood to be able to flip themselves over to be able to sustain the size of that nest, then they just start falling backwards. And through cold weather like this is what I'm going to start seeing. Those small ones I've tagged that showed a little bit of optimism when they first come out. They've staggered through this cold weather, and I'm expecting that they're going to fall back a little bit. Well, it's 3 degrees and there's bees in the air. I am this close on getting some pail feeders on every single colony in this operation. If we don't get nice weather to be able to bring some liquid feed into the colony, I tell you, these colonies need liquid. So I'm this close on pulling the pin on these pails. So I better get some syrup into the colonies tomorrow. And if the weather stutters just even once, even just a little bit of a stagger, we're dropping pails and everything. This is ridiculous. This weather is absolutely stupid. Just walking up to the yard here, that smell of bee poop in the air. It's almost like they've been inside all winter. It's just a fresh smell of bee poop wafting through the air as these hives are getting a chance to fly. You know, they haven't flown for a good week. We've finally got the opportunity to get back into these hives. We're planning on working through about 300 hives this afternoon to do the same thing we were doing before that cold snap come through. We're dropping patties, we're dropping strips, maybe doing a little bit of housekeeping in the hives, just trying to, you know, assist their development ahead. Up and at it and early to work this morning, and I'm finding myself walking in circles of all this work that needs to be done and all this work that's just sitting here to be done, and I'm not able to get any of it done because I'm so fixated on the work that really needs to be done. So we got chased out of the bee yard yesterday because of the wind. So had half the work done that we wanted to get done. Maybe we should have pushed it a little bit longer, because I half made that decision on the anticipated forecast ahead of us, which has now slipped back into that cold rain, and they've mentioned snow again. So typically when I'm working through the spring and I'm making my plans according to the forecast, typically when the forecast starts disappointing me, that's when I start shifting towards different strategies. Today we're going to head out and start feeding these hives with pails. It's maybe something I should have done right off the start. But digging down into the nest yesterday, I found what I was kind of expecting is dry nests. They have lots of honey in these nests. But the actual brood area, it's dry. Like, there isn't a lot of stored syrup around that active brood nest, and that's not good. The resources are there for them to draw on, but to develop, to really excite that queen, to get that nest progressing, moving forward, you need to have that fresh sugar, that fresh syrup or fresh nectar around that nest. So we're heading out with pails this afternoon, get some syrup on these colonies, and then endure a few more days of cold according to the forecast, and then it looks like the promise is nice weather. He's just killing the smokers right now in some lingering snowbanks. I know you're probably going to complain about the wind in this video, but believe you me, I've been complaining about the wind all bloody day. 8 degrees and 60k winds doesn't slow these guys down. Motivated to work. That's our pail setup. We just do everything gravity fed. Just simplifies everything. Requires a little more work, but you know, whatever. Going through and just popping out these lids, these caps. And I'm not having to make so much space with the patties that are on these colonies. They've been on for about a week. They're nicely consuming things. By the time we get back around to these girls, we're going to have to bring a second patty out for them. Definitely making use of that protein. Whew. Certainly not happy. Hi.
Well, you're dressed like a bear.
I guess I'm dressed like a bear, so I gotta kind of expect that. So that's good to see these hives consuming patties. Optimism on the horizon. Oh, and the sun just come out. Look at that. Yeah. So we've been dodging snow squalls all day long. Now the sun's come back out and these bees are flying again. It's just been a crazy day. Feels good when the bees are flying, but when those snow squalls come through, you're just wondering what the hell are we doing out here. But it's good. We're able to, we weren't doing any bee work, we're just feeding. So that's one nice thing about these pails, is it allows us to, it's kind of a love-hate relationship with these bloody pails. It allows me to, you know, feed these bees when it's cold and not actually have to break open the nest to be able to get at them. And it's quick, but I hate these pails. Oh, I hate them. It takes so long. You got to fill them up and take them all out to the hives and put them onto the hives, and some drip, and then the wind, when the wind will start blowing them off, and the skunks will come and knock them off, and it's just a sticky syrup mess. But at any rate, there is, I'd much rather fed through those open feeders, but if we're just not getting the days for them to be able to fly out to bring back that syrup, then I got to take the syrup to them and provide it for them. And just I'm to that point where I have to make sure there's syrup on these colonies. So that's 2 yards done. There's 420 or so here in this yard, and I have another 3 yards to do, so we'll chip away at it tomorrow. Hopefully get some bee work done on Wednesday. So we're just out feeding this yard with pails, and this is what I want. These bees are hungry. They're hungry for the syrup. This colony might be a little bit light because we have a pail on it already, but they've consumed this pail. This is empty, and just the smell of syrup in there has kept them on the screen. So that's our intention with putting these pails out, just to provide that source of sugar for these colonies, which they can access throughout these cold, non-foraging days. I'm looking at the forecast, and again, they just keep pushing out. They give us little bits and pieces of warmth, but we can't use bits and pieces. We need like prolonged periods of warmth. I had somebody ask me to show them what these pails were all about. They're nothing fancy. They're nothing special or new, but all they are is a pail, and I just have a plug. This plug just has a stainless steel fine mesh screen. I forget how many microns that is, but you guys can figure that out. And the plug is just put it into a bung. It's kind of smart, and it pops into the hole, and it holds itself in there. And I tip it upside down. The syrup will come out, and actually it'll hold the plug in. So we just have to be gentle. We don't put the pail down too hard. And the idea is the syrup will drain from the pail, kind of drip until it forms a suction in the pail and hold the syrup within. So then the bees will come up to that screen and just consume that sugar syrup off the screen, and just continually drain that pail down into their nest. So it's kind of slick because it allows us to do work on a cold day like today, or whenever, you know. Put it out on top of the colony without disturbing the nest. Just pop the plug, tip this pail up over top, and then they can access the syrup anytime they want. One thing about these small gallon pails, I exclusively use them in the spring, unlike the 2.5 gallon pail they use in the fall. And the reason being is we're not trying to get a whole lot of syrup into the colonies. We're just trying to provide them with a little bit of sugar just to be able to keep their brood rearing going. So we're not looking at large volumes at a time, just small volumes. Smaller pails, they won't drip as bad as the larger pail does. Larger pail has more area inside, so you get the daytime, nighttime temperature difference, and it'll siphon the syrup out of the pail a lot easier than the small ones. The small ones will still do that to a certain extent, but very slowly, and the bees can clean up the syrup if that does happen. Also, when we're feeding the small pails and we're measuring out, like we're only filling these up to about half full. So we're not putting full pails on these colonies because they don't need a full pail. We just want to give them just enough syrup to be able to surround that brood nest, just to kind of spark things up a little bit. Just buy some time until these bees can get out and either get that natural stuff that's just about to come out, or into the open feeders, a more natural method of bringing sugars in. But these smaller pails, if you misjudge, you know, if you're filling it up half full and you actually fill it 3/4 full, it's just a fraction of that pail, or a fraction amount of syrup that you made a mistake on. Whereas if you're filling a bigger pail and you want to put a gallon in there, or half a gallon, it's a lot harder to measure that exact amount of syrup into the pail. So this way it just helps us measure out the amount of syrup we want almost exactly to every colony that we have within the operation. First thing in the morning, what else do I want? Absolutely beautiful. I'm going to show you this again. This is just spectacular. I'm looking at the trees right now and I see they're very close to, you know, coming out in bloom. So I don't think we have much opportunity to witness a spectacle anymore. But this is just one of my favorite things this spring. I'm going to show you this every time I get the chance, because it just makes me so excited. Pure and utter hunger. Organized chaos. They're foraging on the ultra bee I have in here. Obviously there's no trees out right now. Otherwise they wouldn't be so hot and horny. Oh. Holy shit, I took in about 10 bees into my mouth there. Got stung in the tongue. Ay, ay, ay. Just as that wave, you know, there's a wave of bees in front of the barrel here. And the wave just kind of punched my face. And must have been 10 bees I spit out of my mouth. Never been stung in the tongue before. That was quite the feeling. That is a bag of supplement in that barrel. They'll be done that today. So hopefully these trees hurry the hell up and come out and bloom. You know, this nice weather we have now. Maybe they can be a little bit optimistic and spring into bloom so we get a little bit of natural nectar and some pollen coming into these colonies, because we are just about out of groceries. I'm not going to be putting out any more supplement out like this for the bees. We're putting some into the colonies right now, but this is it for dry feed. As soon as those trees come out, these bees are going to absolutely ignore this barrel. This is how hungry they are. This is how desperate they are right now for any type of protein, because this is a really good sign of the activity within the hives right now for the development of their nest. There is a demand for protein right now. These bees are taking those eggs that the queen has just laid, and they're taking those eggs and they're moving them on into their larval stage. So there's optimism obviously in the nest right now as they try to develop these eggs into larvae, into mature brood. They need a shit ton of protein to do that, and this is their only source right now other than what's inside the colonies within reserves and within themselves. So they are scavenging the countryside for any type of protein and using it all up. So these trees are becoming fuzzy up on top. They are looking like they are close. So I am hoping that the goodwill of Mother Nature brings us the bounty of that natural pollen right now, because we can use it anytime. These colonies aren't looking too bad. It's nice and warm, they really stretch out, so the cluster expands a bit. That's really going to help. If this nice weather continues, this is really going to help this nest expand where it needs to be. So 3 weeks from now, we're going to see response from this. These little guys are actively on. We put these pails out 2 days ago, and they are on the pails quite nicely. Not all of them. Well, there's a few on there. But they're taking the syrup down, so they're using everything we're giving to them. Those guys are. So that's good to see. It's good to see they're actually using the effort we're putting into them. So the yard has gone from, you know, this busy flight to more flying up and out. And we're seeing little glimpses of pollen coming into the colonies. And it's not regular enough to be able to take a video of showing the pollen, but it's just little blitz, choop, 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 coming in. Great big balls of this white tan looking stuff. And then some smaller yellow stuff. So that's quite encouraging. And instantly the feeders have quietened right down. Still busy, but not like this morning. So that's telling me that there's something going on up there. So this could be the start of the pollen flow. This yard needs time. Going through, and they look really good. They're really busy. They're working. Some of these smaller nests, the bigger ones they're in the clear. They got brood in all stages, and they're going on to their second round of brood already. These smaller ones have been staggered. They've been like the brood nest, they had it started, had it going, and then it stopped, and now they're trying to get it going again. And there's nothing wrong with these bees, it's just we need to give them some time. Pretty rough spring so far. So the best medicine for a struggling apiary is sunshine and food. And looks like that's what we got. These are my nucs. I haven't been back to this yard. When have we been back here, Carrie? It was probably a month, not including the pails. But they haven't skipped a beat. They look absolutely fantastic. And those are the ones I want to sell. I don't know if I want to sell these. Sell my best bees. I might not be able to part with these. So the yard is nice and alive. It's first thing in the morning, and you know, we're getting some decent flight. Are you seeing any pollen coming in, Carrie?
Not at the moment.
We're not seeing any pollen coming into the hives yet. It's not obvious enough, so there isn't a heavy pollen flow so far. But the open feeders aren't really being paid attention to, so I imagine these girls are up in the trees gathering that natural bounty. Which now whips the next job that I have to get done, is we have to get these colonies moved out into their summertime locations just to be able to spread out and be able to collect that huge bounty of natural stuff. We haven't seen too much robbing issue yet. These are pretty big yards, like 200, 300, 400 hives per yard. It's a pretty dense bee population, so we have to be very mindful that these big ones, when they get hungry, they're going to start picking on the small ones, especially when the resources are scarce. So we have to consider on getting these hives moved out into their summertime locations right now. But we can't do that until we actually get through, like, one thing at a time, right? We got to get through, and we got to get this medication done. So this is the nucs here, and there's another nuc yard back there. We'll see how long we last working through the day, so we'll get done today or tomorrow. Just getting these mite strips in, just to make sure that, I mean, the most important job right now is mite control above all else. So we got to get that done to make sure that our treatment is on time and within this little narrow window that we have in the spring to be able to treat these mites. And with that natural pollen coming into the colonies, or shall I say pollen, my open feeder has become extremely quiet. So I don't risk getting stung in the face at all right now, because there's virtually no bees here. So as that fresh stuff comes out up in the trees, well, we can't replace that. We can't replace that with any type of supplement provided to them, and they will go to the best food source available. So these guys are just cleaning up scraps, I guess. I don't know what they're doing there, but all my supplement feeders here have quietened down. Even the sugar we have set out for them. Oh, it's because it's empty. Well, maybe we should get some more syrup out. So they took that down pretty fast. The pails on the colony still have a little bit of sugar in them, so I won't worry too much about it. And now that these trees are out, we're going to be getting some poplar nectar coming in also. So I feel like a kid on Christmas morning. I'm just so excited seeing that fresh pollen coming into the colonies. This is where we're actually going to start developing this well-defined brood nest. big one.
That's what she said.
The bees have started work well before we got here this morning. Just feels real good. There's streams of pollen coming into these colonies. So that is a positive sign. So we are moving forward. This is great. What we're doing in this yard this morning, and probably for most of the day, is transferring these 5-frame nucs I brought over. So what the idea is, we're targeting the strong hives, and we're using that surplus strength to boost these smaller nucs. So these smaller nucs are looking at like 2 frames of bees, maybe 3 frames of bees, patch of brood, and these little nucs need a boost. And we're using these strong colonies to do that. There's a lot of certain conditions that might result in the fact of that colony being small, mostly because it's in a bloody 5. So we're going through and we're giving it a tough call. We're assessing the brood pattern. It's tough to assess capped brood right now because we haven't had any pollen come in for them to develop the older brood. They've been using supplement and other resources within their hive to be able to do that. So what we're doing is we're primarily focusing on the newly established brood, the egg laying pattern, and the young larvae. We're looking for a nice tight little nest. We're looking for lots of vigor, lots of laying, well grouped together, just all positive efforts. So with a strong 8 to 10 frame colony underneath, we use a paper towel because I like to chew through that and it just slows down the merger a little bit. We have an excluder in, then an empty shell up top, which we're transferring this nuc up into the top box. These guys will go up, they'll mingle, they'll work together. This nest will get a boost of bees. This queen will be able to, stretch out her egg laying, create a great big nest up on top here. And in about 3 weeks, we'll come through and just simply strip off those top boxes and take them out ready for the flow. Beautiful looking queen. We have some old brood. Bees are hatching out, and it is filled with mature larvae, packed with full of mature larvae. And this is rimmed with younger larvae, rimmed with eggs. So this frame is just screaming ambition, is screaming vigor. So we're going to promote that. We have in there
Eggs and a few graftable larvae.
we're not quite like, yeah, I can't pick up any of that. That's beautiful. We're going to be grafting soon enough. Right full of eggs. See all the spotty brood, older brood. but it is right full of eggs. Right, how far down does it go?
She has got, oh, they're pretty much standing right on the line.
Right on the line there. So that is what we want to promote. A bit of a staggered development because of that cold weather, and now off to the races. Finished up the yard and things looked all right. Things aren't as neat and tidy and uniform anymore. My OCD has kicked in, just looking at the irregularity to the yard now. And it's kind of caused a little bit of confusion. This yard's too big, it's a truckload, and laid out in straight rows. You know, the only way I could set them out of the winter shed. So when I change up the hive arrangement from all single boxes looking all nice and pretty to doubling some up and taking some away, it causes a little bit of confusion in the yard. So there's a little bit of drifting. You'll figure their way out. There's a lot of pollen coming in right now. Just streams of it. It's so nice to see. And the brood nest, it is lush. I'm telling you, there's nothing like looking at a brood nest after pollen first starts flowing. That's the way it's, this is high time. This is when the nest starts to really develop. But the yard, you know, you run into a good part of the yard and then you run into a bad part of the yard. We're not very forgiving when it comes to, you know, the condition of the queen this time of year. So if she looks at you sideways, we get rid of her. And we'll fill those places in with nucs and refreshing it with something that is brand new. But, you know, give it 2 weeks and this yard will be absolutely booming. I can't even get out to my summer yards yet because it's too wet. Otherwise I'd be moving some of these hives out, but it'll just be an adventure for me to go get stuck. So I think I'll just leave things the way it is and just deal with the little bit of drift that's going on. Once they get used to the way we've changed the yard, things will settle down. But, you know, what can I do? I pulled into the first yard and it was dry. It got in there no problem whatsoever, and I thought, oh man, maybe I underestimated how dry the yards were. So then I proceeded to the next one. I passed by 2 yards that are way too wet. I didn't even attempt to get into it, and I hardly got into this yard. Left a little bit of rut down the road, but they are in. And I guess that's just what I'm going to have to do. I'm just going to have to drive to the yard and see if it's dry enough to get in, and if I can't get in, if I get stuck, I guess I'll just call in the tractor. We just got a good shot of rain for most of the day. Now I swear I see blue sky out there on the horizon. Almost tempted to move bees tonight. Oh, destined to get stuck, right? Maybe I'll just cool my jets and wait for things to truly dry up before I try to move any more hives. Looks like we're cutting patties. Of course, I forgot my smoker, left it in the other truck. So I like smoking these hives before I load them, just because you don't get as many bees in the face. But they seem somewhat cooperative, so I'll just have to battle through it. The briskness of the morning this morning is keeping the bees in the box, which is quite nice. The bees are just waking up. They're just heading up to the syrup pail. So I just have to just kind of tap a few of the bees off. So I dump the water off the top of the pail. See, they're just starting to come up to the pail. So I'm not really disturbing the hive a whole much. Good morning, girls. Whoever I leave behind will fly back to another hive. We are kind of living the lingering effect from last year's very wet fall. So our countryside is like a sponge, very wet. You can certainly see it. Like here is a dry yard, and this is sod, right? And every time we drive through with a truck, it just leaves little indents, right? Because the ground's so wet, we're walking on the sod, which holds the truck up, but it just leaves little indents. And then every once in a while, those little indents break through, you know, and then when you keep following the same path, you just start driving ruts down. And it just is so hard on the yards. We got to get this work done, so we have to travel the yards and we have to go out and work the bees and get these trucks out. Like I live on 4x4, but it leaves these ruts that we have to deal with for the rest of the year. And it certainly is a pain. Something we'll just have to deal with, and I'll have to put a little bit of time to freshen things up after the countryside dries up. It's just I'm running out of patience. I'm pretty much at the end of my patience for the spring already. So I just got to push things a little bit now just to make sure that I get these hives out where they're supposed to be able to collect all that pollen that's just upon us. We're just at the start of it. So I'll get these girls out. I'm going to chip away every morning, just get 2 loads out as I can. Like forecast is good, so certainly we will be getting some drying weather. Like we're approaching May here. We haven't turned a wheel on the farm yet. It is so wet. But it's just something we're going to have to deal with. And you know, this moisture is not a bad thing. We're going to use this later on in summer. When it's hot, these plants are growing. We'll be able to use all this moisture all through the summer. So it's almost like this moisture, it's a locked in honey crop. So I just got to quit my bitching and just put up with it, just get the work done and make the best of it. Like, what else can I do other than be a little bit strategic in my work and just kind of appreciate some of those silver linings that's there. One of those ideal bee working days today. Just feels so good. The bees are up in flight. They're bringing in pollen. Just keep adding these days up, right? So what I'm doing right now is I'm going through. This is our 3rd round, and I'm making a tough call. So basically what I'm just doing is tipping back these colonies, giving them another assessment, and kind of gauging on the, you know, the caliber of that cluster, whether or not they meet the grade or not. So anything that doesn't have a tag is a medium size, so that's between the, you know, 4, 5 to 6 frames of bees. Anything with the blue tag, I'd measured at like a 7, 8, 9, 10 frames of bees. And anything with a gray tag shows 3 frames and less. They automatically get an inspection. So I'm going to go back through and I just tip these colonies back and just do another grade assessment to see if they've maintained or advanced. And I want to see at least to maintain the cluster to maintain itself. And if I see advancement, then I'm going to promote that. I'm also going through, and these guys have gobbled up their patties already. It's quite ridiculous. So we're going through and we're adding our 2nd pound now. It seems like when that fresh pollen comes in and then you really start to spark up that nest, and there's a lot of brood production going on, and that 2nd round of brood you have lots of nurse bees. It seems like that's when these patties really shine. They just devour the patties. I guess there's lots of nurse bees to devour that protein, bring it down, and that huge demand on protein within that nest just requires so much resource. And then you get like weather comes through where it interrupts their foraging, interrupts that food inflow. So then they turn directly up top to where those supplements are. So I'm sure noticed the patties, they've stepped up on them. So we gotta, you know, quicken up our pace a little bit, get more patties out for them. The forecast looks good, but like I've been complaining about all spring, our weather has been so irregular, and this is where the patties are important, just to maintain that diet. They've also consumed their syrup. They're just finishing up the pails, which is good. We'll provide them more of that later on. So this hive I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is counted, this is measured as a medium, and it's maintained itself. So this is good. I'm not going to go down into them. They look quite content. The second thing I'm looking for is the amount of supplement they've eaten. And they've practically consumed the entire pound, so that's a good sign. That means there's a well-developing nest inside here. So I'm going to give them a pound. And we're just going to leave these guys alone until our next round, when we actually go down into the nest and physically inspect the brood and the condition of the queen, and either take from them because they're too big, or boost them because they need a little bit of a jolt, a little bit of boost, or call them out because the queen's failing and pull this hive back into the mating yard. Well, thank goodness for rock and roll and early morning coffee. One of those two things that help motivate and keep a guy going. Yesterday was the first time that I felt that delicate spring nature of these colonies had disappeared, and I felt as if these colonies were actually progressing and moving forward. Well, I think it's a combination of a few things. It's the warmth, it's the pollen, and they have finally gone through that first hatch, so they are just full of young bees. I'm seeing an instant response. I'm seeing that ambition, that move forward. I'm seeing that queen, stretching out. I'm seeing those bees. It's one thing for the queen to stretch out as far as she wants, but it's another thing for those bees to take all that and then move it into the larval stage. And they're doing that. They're doing that with absolutely every egg that queen lays. So there's ambition and optimism. And right now is the time that we're going to capitalize on it. So the forecast is good. It's clear. These bees, they're advancing. It looks absolutely fantastic. I'm moving these hives out to their summer yards as long as I'm not getting stuck. And I mean, it's off to the races now. And if I'm going to get stuck, make sure it's worth pulling me out. So there we go. There's this yard. I got in, I just couldn't get out. And I'm off to another yard that's wet. And then, I don't know, I'm running out of yards to put bees, so I guess I'll just have to wait for the sun to dry. I think my ambitions of moving bees out is slowly coming to an end. I mean, this is what I'm looking at, the access of all my yards. Just places where it's just absolutely saturated. We'll need sun and time to be able to clear that up. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to get back there. I dropped a yard back in there, so I guess we'll just have to get back at them when the laneway clears up. So I'll have to fix this roadway for my neighbor, or he'll be pissed. They're very forgiving. They'll understand, especially after a fall last year, and they're battling ruts every bloody day too. So they understand what's going on, and we'll just clean up the mess after we're done. So I have one more load, one more yard I mean, to move, and we're gonna poke into a yard that might need the tractor again, but I'm counting my bets that we'll be able to poke in, drop off, and get out without getting stuck. So it was -1 last night and extremely cold. I had to put my wool vest on with my jacket along my bee suit to stay warm this morning as I moved some hives out. Super cold, but they changed the forecast on us. That nice promise of warmth has kind of slipped away, and I'm not sure exactly where it's gone. So we're pushing the limits today. It must be, what's the temperature in the truck today?
The truck said it was 8.
8 degrees, and these bees are just flying a little bit, but we're trying to press through another couple hundred hives today just to make sure. We're doing assessments and dropping patties just to make sure that these big colonies have protein on hand. We have 2 days of rain coming and cold, and it doesn't look like until later next week these hives will be able to get up and flying again, which is extremely frustrating. But I'll talk a little bit pessimistic, and then I'll come around and tip back some colonies, and I'll just show you what I'm looking at. We have boxes of bees. I mean, we're going through a major hatch right now. This was a medium colony that we upgraded to a strong. So, I mean, this queen has a little bit of spirit in her. What is she, a 2015? So she's got to be a younger supersedure. But look, it's just a box of bees. And if you look what's going on, they're just hanging off the frames, which is not a good sign, because that's going to allow the queen to come down and lay queen cells. Come on, bees. Well, they're not moving for me. So they're starting to come down. They're laying drone brood underneath here. So that's a really good sign. That means this colony has some girth. It's feeling really good. You're going to notice some queen cups here, but they haven't had any attention put to them yet. But they will next week, I bet you. Once this hive goes through more of its hatch, this colony is going to feel extremely full. She's going to come down and start preparing to swarm. So we have to get space on top to be able to pull these bees off the bottoms of the frames, move them up into the top box to kind of avert the swarming spirit. So we're just entering into that. This cold weather is not going to really entice that swarming spirit of these colonies. Let's tip this next one here. But just the fact that they're going to run out of space is just going to promote a crowded nest. And we don't want a crowded nest this time of year. So this is what I'm tipping back all day long. Beautiful. Puts me in a great mood. And they haven't drawn any, oh yeah, they are. There's drone cells all the way down the bottom here. So they're feeling really good. And we have a few queen cups. Where did I see some? Down there. No attention paid to them. So we got to get space on these guys. Alrighty. And a drone. We haven't seen too many walking drones, but they're starting to appear. So that's, you know, things are progressing. But I'm a little bit torn. I'm not sure exactly what to do. I hate giving space to colonies when it's cold out, because you just disturb the entire, you know, all the cluster dynamics is going inside. You all of a sudden give them a huge amount of space up top, and it just kind of shocks that nest. and it induces stress. Now, colonies that big, it won't matter a damn, because they're just going to kind of envelope up into that top box and they'll just take it over. But colonies that have marked blue, they're maybe not quite as strong as that, and they all of a sudden lose their ceiling. It goes up on top over another box. Their cluster will kind of snap back a little bit, and their entire cluster dynamics change. And it can induce stress, and if it's really cold and wet, kind of like what's coming here, you know, it can only promote disease like chalk brood, or you know, you get into the other viral diseases or bacterial diseases. One thing we could do is we could add this space underneath that brood nest, and that way all those bees that hatch out, it'll give them a place to go. It's not going to prevent the swarming at all, anything like that, because you know that queen's moving down. You want to keep her moving up, but it gives the place for those bees to go and kind of relieves that swarming spirit just a little bit. But it's a hell of a lot of work going through, lifting boxes and slapping the seconds underneath. It's a lot of work. Then you got to come around and put that second back on top, just because that's the way you want the queen moving. You want to move up and lay out that split, so then you can take that box away later on as surplus. So I don't know what to do. We'll proceed with our work. We'll allow these couple cold rainy days to pass us by, and then maybe midweek it'll warm up a little bit, and then we'll slap out, you know, 300 or 400 seconds onto the apiary, just to provide a little bit of space to allow these colonies to develop. And hopefully, you know, they upgrade the forecast a little bit to a little bit more warmth, just to allow us to proceed with our work.